Good morning. This is KPCA-LP in Petaluma, a free-range radio and TV station. And my name is Michelle Love, and you are listening to Dynamic Change. And this show is to give some insight, psychological insight into how we can have more wellness in our lives. And I am a trauma-informed wellness coach, and I teach self-defense. I have a degree in psychology, and I'm a fitness trainer, and I have worked with people in the wellness field and mental health for over 30 years. And what I like to do is bring insight and examples. I make up imaginary examples of how we can grow from our life experiences in ways where we can have more happiness. And if you need more information on me, you can always look me up on my website, dynamicchange.wellness.com. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. It's gotten very warm here in Petaluma. And so today I'm really excited to talk about the benefits of being alone. And I think this is a really important thing to address because I think naturally as people, we like connection. We want love. We want to find a way to feel acceptance, to feel that someone sees us, to really feel that satisfaction of love. And finding love can be so elusive and messy and challenging. And so I want to make up an example today of, I make up these people. They're totally imaginary stories. It's like something you could, read in about someone's life, right? Just an example of an average life and how it could play out from a particular experience in a childhood. And so this is imaginary name, and so I'm going to go with Pamela today. And my example for this imaginary person is for her childhood, she grew up with the parents had some issues where there was some dysfunction, where there was some different kinds of layers of abuse and being put down. So Pamela it affected her self-esteem, and it affected her feeling lovable. And so just to kind of break it down, because I think everyone ultimately just wants to find a way to heal anything that they went through. And I'm sure there's people that grew up and had beautiful childhoods where they adapted so well. And I love seeing those people. You come across people every once in a while that just came from a background that had such an easy, loving flow, and that is just so beautiful to me. And so I really like to honor that. But I'm just speaking to the people that there wasn't that ease of flow. And so they're healing certain experiences that they imprinted on from a young age so they can have that happiness and understand how to heal that. Because the more we heal ourselves, the more available we are to be as together and healthy as possible for our children, for our mates, for our grandchildren, for our nieces, for our nephews, all of our friends. The more we heal, it indirectly helps everyone we come in contact with. It's so important. It's not just about us, in my opinion. It's not just about our own quality of life. It just helps you relate, and it helps you set a model and an example for younger people. And often we might not have our own kids, but we might be an auntie or an uncle, or we might work with kids, or we have friends that have kids. No matter what your life entails, there's always these different ages we come across. And when we heal ourselves, not only do we have more empathy for our parents that maybe had certain struggles they were not able to heal, right? It allows us to have more compassion for them, more understanding, so you can have a more healed connection and more compassion and understanding for ourselves. And I think this really leads to having a happier and just feeling that ease and that peace in life. So that's why I do this show. So today I want to speak to that healing. So Pamela is my example. And again, you're listening to KPCALP in Petaluma, a free-range radio and TV station. My name is Michelle Love, and I'm speaking as a wellness coach with a degree in psychology today about the benefits of being alone. So my imaginary example today is Pam. She grew up with some layers of abuse and basically emotional neglect. And so she didn't develop a good sense of feeling lovable, and her self-esteem was affected by this. So to give an example, she grows up, and let's say Pamela in her 20s. Now, again, this example I think can be applied to so many ages. So this could be Pamela in her 20s, Pamela's in her 30s, and even in her 40s. And so I want everyone to know these kind of patterns often continue in life. But I think when we're young, I would love it if this kind of slowing down and going into the self happened at a younger age. But I think it happens really young, where like in your 20s and even before that, you're really looking for love so strongly. I think it starts when you're a teen, and then it continues very strongly in through the 20s and I would say at 30s. And then it kind of slows down a little bit. People, I think, start looking at life in other contexts. So she is looking for love. Now she's looking for love outside of herself because she doesn't know how to feel it within her own experience, her own psyche, her own emotional body, her sense of self, because she didn't develop that, an imprint on that as a child with her parents, because her parents had their own issues and their own dysfunctional patterns that just got in the way of her feeling that. So her sense of self got compromised. And so she's looking outside of herself, and she's, dating, and she has all this love she wants to give. Like, she's a very loving person, this imaginary person I made up, Pamela. So she's very loving, but when there's a compromised sense of self, there is this inability to understand how to look for a healthy relationship. So because she grew up with some different types of abuse, she doesn't have standards or understand what a healthy partner would look like. Okay, so because she didn't get it modeled by the parents, they had a lot of issues and there was abuse. So she doesn't really understand what a healthy relationship looks like or should feel like. And she doesn't understand that she needs to have standards for her potential mates either. So she's going through life, this imaginary person, my example today, Pamela, is going through her 20s from relationship to relationship, and it never feels satisfying. She doesn't feel loved, and she has all this love to give. She has a beautiful heart, and she's just really pouring this love out into other people, and she doesn't know how to pick the best people because she doesn't have a reference point for that healthy partner connection. And so there's this element of dissatisfaction, of not feeling seen, of not feeling appreciated, and that people don't truly understand her heart. And she has all this love, and so she's very perplexed. So Pamela's feeling wow, like I don't understand why it is so difficult to find this love connection. So, to break down what's going on with Pamela, so she's looking outside herself for love. She's looking in her environment for that connection, for that definition even of love. Because love begins within ourselves, and it begins with our own sense of connection within ourselves. So I'm going to talk about how Pamela, after many relationships that just felt not only dissatisfying, but painful, like her heart's like, oh, that just kind of broke my heart over and over and over. What is going on here? So Pamela, let's say by the time she turns 26, is feeling like she's got to figure something else out, because obviously this is not going to accomplish what she wants. This is not going to find love for her. So she decides to not date anybody and to not have any intimacy, any romantic relationships, and just really pull back. So what I want to talk about today, the topic is the benefits of being alone. And I think it is so nourishing to be able to have the discipline, and I do think it takes discipline, because you have to make that what is most important to you is to take that time to confront whatever is blocking this issue of finding love. So what blocks that? Loneliness, not feeling worthy and lovable, and also not feeling connected within yourself. So her identity was compromised. Her feeling, the way she, like, feeling connected within herself was compromised. She didn't feel rooted within herself because of the instability of how she grew up. The abuse can create this, it's almost like you have a loose footing. Okay, so there feels like there's no stable ground to stand on to develop that strong core connection within yourself. So being alone allows you to work on this. So when you're in relationship over and over and over, it continues to give you that loose footing, because you don't have it within yourself. So you're not going to be able to create that with someone else, because that groundedness, that sense of knowing who you are, that sense of feeling solid within yourself can only be mastered within yourself. And it's too distracting to be in relationship. There's too much input. There's all this stimuli from trying to be with someone, and there's just no way to be able to just feel and experience the self enough when we're constantly engaging in an intimate connection with someone, that's romantic. You can have friendships and things like that, but romantic relationships bring out all your issues, because they're about the identity of the self. They're about self-love and feeling worthy. It's such a loaded bag, right? It's about intimacy and all kinds of things that are so complex. And so Pamela realizes that it's just not there's no payoff with constantly reaching outside of herself, looking for that kind of validation, love, everything outside of herself. There's no payoff. And I think that's really important to consider when we are in relationships where we're moving through them and trying to date, or even if we're in a relationship that has some level of satisfaction. are we getting enough emotional, healthy receiving? So payback isn't, doesn't sound like the best word, but I just want to give an example of receiving. Like, are we really receiving something that feels nourishing, that feels like it is fulfilling what we're wanting to achieve with that connection? I think it's really important to look at that. I think we kind of go along with this unstable footing, this unstable amount of knowledge a lot through life, where we're just kind of rushing forward because we don't know how to stop and say, I need to do something different here in order to really receive in a way where I'm going to feel very happy in the end. Because we don't understand how to get there, we don't understand what that looks like, because we don't have a reference point because of the dysfunctional imprinting that you get from childhood. So it's almost like this out-of-body, empty experience where we're just kind of living in our head, and the emotions that we feel deep in our body are just, not getting that solid, connected, satisfying feeling. It's almost like eating junk food all the time. So if we eat junk food all the time, our emotional fulfillment is the equivalence of junk food. It's never going to feel nourishing to our system. We're not going to grow the beautiful muscles we want from that. Our skin's not going to look great. Our hair's not going to look beautiful because we're putting in this junk food that is not good for our system. It's the same thing with our emotions. And what are we putting into our life with our emotions, with our experiences? How nourishing are those connections in our environment? And sometimes you really just need to stop and pull back. So you can even do this in relationship, which maybe sometime I'll speak to that. But you can use these exercises that I'm talking about from my imaginary person, Pamela, that I made up for today's example of the benefits of being alone. So again, this is Dynamic Change. You're listening to Michelle Love on KPCALP in Petaluma. And I'm talking about the benefits of being alone. So you have the emotional, the intellectual, the somatic, the emotional experience in your body to explore developing your own sense of self-love and self-worth, when rather than just going through relationship after relationship trying to find those qualities outside of yourself. So Pamela's in her 20s, and again, I think this can be really representative of almost any age. We can learn this lesson all the way through life, but starting, as a teen, I think people get so driven on relationship and that kind of connection, romantic connection, that they don't slow down enough to really find that connection within themselves. So Pamela realizes that her romantic relationships that she's been chasing after for so many years are not giving her any kind of healthy nourishment, and they just feel kind of like they wear her down, that they're just painful, they're kind of heartbreaking, and that's not good for our sense of self or self-esteem even. So I think it's important to consider not having romantic relationships. So that's what Pamela did. She decided to just not have intimacy, any sexual connection in a romantic way. And she still has friends and socializes, but she's just not going to pursue romantic relationship. Now, how can Pamela work on her sense of self at this time? And so Pamela decides to join a women's group, and a women's group that's just talking about developing the self, nurturing the self, self-care, self-love. And so I think there's a couple of ways that we can start getting in touch with starting to feel lovable and worthy. So I want to give a couple examples. And so I think connecting with other women is really helpful because throughout my life, I love watching people because I have a background in psychology, and I really had such a strong urge to help people that I felt like so much could be learned by just observing other people and observing other women from other cultures. I always found very interesting because they had such a different way of expressing personal power, asking for what they need, how they handled boundaries. So I always watched other women. And so I think going into a women's group and just noticing how other women communicate, and sometimes we can just really learn from each other of what does work for some people, what are they doing to develop that sense of feeling lovable and worthy. And so there's a couple of things I think that can be developed and some hobbies to work on that connection. So finding something that you create, I think this is one way to feel good about something you're doing, right? So the magic of feeling proud of, oh, I made something really beautiful, I think is really healthy for self-esteem and for the psyche. So finding something you like to create. Now it can be artistic, it can be music, it could be sewing, it could also be creating a physical expression, it could be dancing, it could be running a marathon, like almost like an accomplishment of something you created and expressed through yourself. And I think if you can give it as much texture as possible, so something that's creative. Okay, so I think artistic is because when we do creative expression, you're expressing your emotional body. This is engaging a very important aspect of the psyche and the emotional well-being of the person. So whatever you like to do, you can explore a painting class, you can do, even gardening is an artistic expression because there's color involved, there's texture involved, it's almost like you're feeling the beauty of the earth, of the plants, of the flowers. You're feeling the beauty of creating pottery, so there's a physical textile, it's the kinetic expression of the body of connecting with beauty. So doing something artistic that involves not just your mind, but an actual doing. And also then doing it with your mind. And so I really think creative writing is very helpful. Writing poetry is very helpful. Or sometimes you can just even voice type and think about things that you find inspiring and beautiful. Like you could sit and Pamela could sit and look at the sunset every night and voice type it and talk about all the beautiful things she found to start connecting with beauty. Because the more we appreciate beauty and we can start connecting it with it ourselves, it's about that whole kind of gratitude, that whole being able to embrace it in your environment also helps us embrace it within ourselves. So if she spent 10-15 minutes a day and she decides voice typing is the easiest way for her to make sure she gets it done, then that's a wonderful tool for her. She can sit there and reflect and sit and talk about the colors in the sky, talk about the breeze and how it feels on her skin. So again, this experience of the senses, helps regulate your nervous system. So she can also, maybe she put the phone down as it's recording on the little table in front of her that she has in her yard, and she's kind of hugging her body, touching her body. She can tap on her body. This helps regulate your nervous system. She takes a couple deep breaths. And this helps, the more we regulate our nervous system, it helps heal trauma a little bit. It helps regulate those feelings of not being connected with the self that develops from traumatic experience. So even though she's not necessarily reminiscing about something that was difficult that she went through, that had a trauma reaction within her nervous system, anytime we work on regulating our nervous system, you can do it just by those senses, by hugging the self, just caressing your arm, tapping on the body, doing that breathing I've talked about before. You can do this with me now. Try some of these things now. So if you're sitting down, or you can also try it later, but just give yourself a hug, like just as much as you can. Like wrap your arms around your body, and then kind of just tap on your body with your fingertips. Tap on your chest, tap on your legs, tap on your top of your head, your forehead. Just gently tap on your arms, and do that kind of block breathing I brought up before. So let's just do 2 breaths just for that example, and you breathe at your own breath pace. I breathe pretty long because I've worked on deep breathing for a long time. So do whatever works for you, but you can do like an inhale for 4. So for example, you can do this with me now, breathing in through the nose. Once you breathe in for your count of 4, hold it for a count of 7, or as close as you can to get to that, holding that breath in. And once you get to your count of 7, and you'll work on going deeper and deeper at your own breath pace, then you breathe out through a straw, through your mouth, for a count of 8. One more time, in through the nose for 4. Hold for 7. Exhale for 8 through a straw. So Pamela's done maybe 5 or 6 breaths like this. She's hugged her body, she's tapped on her body, and she's connecting with how she feels inside of her body. And she's looking outside, and she's saying, oh my goodness, the sky is lovely this evening. I can smell the flowers I planted in the yard. I can see the birds. I can feel the temperature on my skin. And it just feels like it's embracing her, like she feels calm. She feels connection to nature. So that's one good thing too that also helps regulate. So she has her feet are bare, and they're just in. She has a little patch of grass there, and she can feel her body starting to feel calmer by doing just these couple of things. And then from there, she's going to appreciate, maybe this is how she starts appreciating herself. She's going to list a few things that she did that day that she feels really good about. When we make a list of what we feel good about ourselves, you are establishing your feelings of self-worth and why you're lovable. So she's appreciating herself. She's appreciated her environment. She's regulated her nervous system a little bit, and then she's saying, today I took the time to make myself important. And there's a couple things I did that I feel really good about. And she's going to start with, I planted some beautiful flowers to really do something that just makes my heart feel good. Maybe she feels so much satisfaction, and she plants her favorite flower. Let's say her favorite flower is daisies, because they're so happy. So she's connecting with that feeling of happiness she feels when she sees that flower. And she's saying, I made it important enough for me to feel happy by taking the time of doing that act for myself, because I get so much happiness when I do it. So she lists that, she's voice typing it, and she says, I did that for myself today. I went for a walk today, so my body felt good. And then I did that YouTube show, or I went and took an exercise class, so my body feels good. So I feel attractive, I feel strong, I feel healthy and vibrant. And maybe she used a special mask on her face to makes her feel, beautiful. She did some nourishing things for her heart, for her health, and then she dressed up. And I think this is really important when we take time to be alone, because this whole show is about the benefits of being alone romantically and sexually. The benefits of being alone is you get to fill your own cup. And this helps us when we are with someone. It's not like we have to do it forever, but when we do these things in life, you are filling up your cup. So when you are with someone, it's going to be so much more meaningful, because we have connected with ourselves first. So she dressed up for herself. She put on something that she feels beautiful in. She put on some nice smelling, she likes to wear oils or perfumes. And then she took herself out on a date. And I think this is really powerful. So the idea of the date is a date with herself. Pamela is spending time with herself. She's being romantic with herself when she thinks of what makes her feel romantic. So Pamela is learning how to feel worthy, feel self-love, and creating that experience within herself. So before we can really connect with others, she needs to be able to feel it within, right? So she wants to create as many textures as possible. So she says, okay, what makes me feel romantic? And she says, I love going to this one particular restaurant. It doesn't have to be, she's going for ambiance and texture here. So this is not about money. This is about what moves you. Romance should be about what moves you, what moves your heart, what moves your soul, what really has those layers of sensuality for her. So she decides, I love this one Indian restaurant because I love it, because I love the colors in the restaurant, I love the food, and they have live music on this particular night. And the decor always inspires her, the colors. So she puts on a beautiful color. Okay, she puts on a pretty dress for herself. And she spends time doing her hair and wearing that pretty perfume. And she decides she's going to go to the restaurant and treat herself. Maybe she does this once a week or once a month. It doesn't matter. But this is her date night with herself. And she writes poetry. She likes to write. How romantic is that? So sweet. And so she can write about the beautiful things she saw in the garden, in the sky, with the flowers, and then also something beautiful about herself. And start giving it experience and texture. This is how we start creating this. It's like a muscle memory, okay? You have to create experience for things that maybe she did not learn as a child. Because when you have a deficit with understanding self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, you have to find a way to create that experience, that felt experience, that emotional experience, that mindful mental way of thinking within yourself. So then it can start growing like a plant within you that you keep nourishing with healthy food, with healthy experience, with healthy texturizing, so that her sense of love and self-worth and romance within herself and sensuality is building within herself. And it's not being ever compared with, how does someone else see me? Will that person find me attractive? Do they think I'm in shape enough? Am I beautiful enough? Because that reference point from outside of ourselves is not very healthy for self-esteem at all. In fact, most of the time, the head tripping that goes along with that wears down a healthy sense of self. Okay, so this is building it within herself. So she sits there, she has this wonderful meal, and she's writing poetry. And she writes all these beautiful things about the nature, and then she writes about herself and these things she finds beautiful about herself. She intertwines it within the poetry. She can write a story around it. She can draw a picture. But imagine taking that time to do something special where you get to feel beautiful. And men can do this too. Men can, sometimes they like to do art, or they want to create a story within their head and express that, or maybe they like to work with their hands and do woodwork. But imagine putting that emphasis on whether it's what you're thinking about in your mind before you create what you're creating, but think about yourself in part of that expression of that beautiful creation you're making. So men can do the same thing. And I know our society, I don't think it encourages this kind of romantic connection within yourself, but it's so beautiful. And, back in the day, I used to watch a lot of European and foreign movies with subtitles and everything. And I just noticed that the quality of the filmmaking, the cinema, there was often this deeper felt sense of sensuality and sense of the connection of romance. And I think it's very healing and healthy for love. And so how do we create it within our American society where we're so busy, right? So I think creating this time to be by yourself, and you can even do this when you're in relationship, but taking time to romanticize yourself and connect with yourself. So when you're with your partner, you feel your cup feels full, you feel beautiful, you feel sensual, you feel handsome, you feel good about yourself. And that's like how we feel when we work out, and take care of our bodies and eat well, take care of ourselves, but giving it a romantic texture as well, taking time for yourself. So again, to go back to my imaginary person I made up, Pamela. Pamela's in her 20s. She's had unsuccessful relationships over and over and over because she didn't have a sense of love and worthiness within herself, because there was dysfunction with how she grew up with some abuse, that she never developed a good, strong sense of self. And that continual, repetitive, unfulfilling relationships is a mirror of that unstable home environment she grew up in, that unstableness, and she decided to be alone. I'm talking about the benefits of being alone and how to date yourself and save that sensual energy for yourself to really feel beautiful again, to feel handsome again, or to develop it if it was never there, rather than going through searching for love outside of yourself, searching for that sense of self outside of your own being, which is never going to work. And taking that space for yourself. So she's dating herself. She goes on this date. And other things she can do. So she joined the women's group to kind of listen to other women, learn any ahas that are going to show her what is helping them in life. She's doing writing poetry, she's exercising, she's dressing up for herself, and she's doing things to regulate her nervous system, which I talked about, the block breathing. You can touch and hug yourself, tap on yourself, little things that are starting to integrate within her nervous system these feelings of self-appreciation, connection, and so doing things that are meaningful, I think, are another way to work on self-worth. And this is something that can be done kind of outside the self, but it helps you acknowledge as long as you're not overdoing, right? Do it in just a small healthy dosage, but doing, it's almost like those random acts of kindness, doing something that is relating to the integrity of how you feel about yourself. So Pamela really adores children. And let's say, she's in her 20s, and let's say she is an auntie. She has a sister that has a kid, and so she decided to volunteer at her nieces and nephews' school. Just once a week, a few hours, she does something. And what this does is it gives her a place to send that love in a way that's not, I think often we're searching for love outside of ourselves, and sometimes we can be so loving, but we don't know how to be loving with ourselves. But we figure the only way we can really take, like looking for a place to take this love, we just project it out into romantic relationship because we're trying to find a way to receive it, right? So we're thinking, oh, it's got to be this sexualized experience or whatever. And a lot of times I think the quality of love is lost. So Pamela decides, okay, I'm going to do something meaningful. I'm going to volunteer at the school because it helps me feel love connection in a different way. So she gets to feel that beautiful love in her heart by spending time around her niece and nephew, whatever it is. And there's always ways you can volunteer, especially when you have a family member there, it's easy to do. But she's volunteering, so she gets to experience love rather than trying to find love through a romantic relationship. She can give that love to her niece and nephew, feel that appreciation back, and also feel good about her self-worth of she's doing something meaningful. So this helps build your sense of self-worth because she's not necessarily looking for anything back. When we are trying to, have a relationship outside of ourselves in a romantic sense. So when Pamela was searching and going through relationship over and over and over, none of them were working. They were dysfunctional. They weren't satisfying. But she was hoping to get that sense of love, someone to love her back. But see, it has that element of sexuality that gets involved. And I don't think playing that pattern is really healthy for our sense of self-worth. I think holding back that sexuality for yourself and then working on that love muscle helps you retain that or build that experience of love and sensuality, and feeling loved has that texture of self-worth, so that sexuality doesn't have this empty component. Like sometimes we get involved with those intimate relationships because, Pamela just wanted to feel connection, but she really wanted love. Like, there's nothing wrong with intimacy on that level. That's a beautiful thing. But the thing is, we want as many layers to nourish ourselves as possible. And I think this also goes for men as well. And I think we all want to feel love. So when we have romantic, sexual, intimate connection and everything, that it's as nourishing as possible. And so this gives Pamela, my made-up person, her outlet for some love experience where she can give love without necessarily an agenda of trying to feel a sense of self per se or validation through just giving to her niece and nephew and the school environment. She's doing it for the sensation of feeling love and doing something worthwhile that feeds her soul, feeds her sense of self. So volunteering however you want, it could be at the animal shelter, it could be, helping someone that but not in a sense of there's no boundaries. Again, you're developing, we're talking about Pamela developing a sense of feeling love and connection and doing something that helps her feel worthy within herself. So something that has some really healthy boundaries. So maybe, once a week for an hour, or once a week, or 3 hours a month. So something that's very contained, very simple, but she has the intention of, it allows her to honor how beautiful her heart is. That she's really loving, she's doing this thing because she wants to share that love in a healthy way. And she does also get nourished by feeling the love from however she's volunteering. She's feeling the love, the appreciation from her niece and nephew, or the other kids in the school, or the animals at the shelter. She can feel that connection. So it is building, it's creating a mirror where she's seeing that she's lovable. But you have to also set the mindful expectation, the thought process of, okay, I'm going to do this activity, not only because it makes me feel good integrity wise, morally wise, or whatever, it has this meaning, but set the intention. So we'll tell Pamela, set that intention of noticing how lovable she is by taking this time to give to others. So connecting those dots with the sense of self, of being worthy, being lovable, seeing it in the animal's eyes of appreciation, seeing it within her niece and nephew, or the other kids or even the teachers are like, oh, thank you for helping. So, doing something where has some meaning, where you can get your worthiness reflected back at you. This is so helpful for Pamela. So she's getting that reflection. She's taking herself out on date nights. She's doing the women's group. She's getting ahas. And she decided to really enjoy the benefits of being alone by understanding what spending time with herself feels like. And so the things that come up for Pamela to heal are loneliness. So when she feels lonely, she can journal about that. She can talk about that in the women's group. Maybe she decides to do a little counseling for a while, and she goes sees a therapist, and she decides to take some art classes or some dance classes, but just write about the loneliness. Make it okay. So it doesn't matter if that comes up. So Pamela has loneliness that comes up. Work on still doing things that feel good, to kind of heal and transmute that loneliness. So let's think about what comes up for Pamela. Pamela has loneliness that comes up. She realizes that she sometimes we internalize these feelings of feeling bad about, she felt bad about herself, right? So she's like, I really judge myself for that I don't, she doesn't feel pretty enough. And so it shouldn't be about feeling pretty enough. I think it's about what's inside. But what she can do is do things that make her feel good. So she decided she wanted to own to herself, I have loneliness that comes up, Pamela says, and I don't feel pretty. So what she can do to work on that is she can journal about that to get it out. And she can say, okay, in reference to feeling pretty, she's going to work out this many times a month. So maybe she goes to a gym and she's like, I'm going to hire a trainer, because the more we exercise, it releases endorphins, which makes us feel happy, and we feel more attractive, and it's just good for our health. So it's such a valuable tool, not in a way that in a dysfunctional way to do it, but just supporting the idea of the more I work out, it's just going to make me feel beautiful in the end, and it's going to release endorphins, and I'm going to feel healthier. And so she decided to make that decision. Now, another thing that Pamela can do is imagine, in the evening, remember how I had her sitting there doing the voice typing and doing her appreciative, ideas that she's saying into the phone with the voice typing of her beautiful environment in the yard. and the sunset and the birds and the smells and everything, and appreciating something about herself and about her day, saying that she really honors her worthiness and her lovableness because she worked in the school that day. And she can also talk about and think about, okay, she's going to shut her eyes when she does her deep breathing, and she can do that block breathing where she's breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 7, exhaling for 8 through a straw, and imagine putting that loneliness in front of her and the feelings of not feeling pretty enough, like this ball of tar, ugh, right? In front of her, this ball of tar. And then she just sends it love. Just imagine, like a mindful technique of sending it love. And when we do the idea of Pamela putting it outside of her body, when we realize we can let things go, it doesn't have to stay within our psyche, within our body. You know, when we feel something that doesn't feel good, you can imagine putting it somewhere. She could also imagine, you know, drawing it on a piece of paper and then burying that in her yard. She could write a story about it, but getting it outside of the self. So she's going to imagine putting it, this ball of tar, you know, just in front of her on the ground, and she's going to blast it with love. Maybe she just imagines, you know, pink light coming from her heart to just change it. Just change it. Let it shift. Let it melt. Maybe the energy she imagines sending it melts it. And then it goes into the earth and it just changes and it becomes part of the nutrients for the beautiful flowers she's going to plant tomorrow. So, you know, giving us some tools. We want to give Pamela these tools of how can she shift and change this feeling inside of her. So the idea is that she's letting go of things that are causing pain, that are just thoughts, belief systems, emotions she imprinted on as a child, growing up in that dysfunctional environment, and also communicating with herself through her voice typing, trying to put some understanding. So she's seeing the therapist is telling her, look, you know, what you imprinted on with your family environment, that wasn't true. That's not who you are. Don't let it define who you are. She says, Pamela, you know, this therapist tells Pamela, define yourself. Finding your own definition. So these exercises, you know, she's getting the understanding of what she grew up with, and that was just that her parents had some real limitations within themselves, and that was their limitations, had nothing to do with who she was as a person. She just absorbed it from the environment and the things that were, you know, reflecting their limitations. But to let go of that pain, because when Pamela holds on to that pain and keeps moving through life expressing that pain, it helps no one. And so these exercises of romanticizing the self, of doing things that feel romantic, that give texture to feeling, develop a sense of understanding romance, of understanding what love feels like, of appreciation, of sensuality. All these things will only enhance her sense of self, because they're all so healthy and so nourishing. It's like eating that really healthy meal. She's creating it in all these exercises. And then when she decides that she wants to date at some point, she's going to be so much more nourished and understand what feels romantic to her. So when she is attracting a mate, she knows what feels healthy to her and how she wants to engage with them, and it's going to be so much more satisfying. It's not going to have this emptiness where it kind of wears down her sense of self, like she's just kind of giving herself over to this experience, you know, that's not nourishing her in any way, and it never lasts. It never has this lasting quality. And or sometimes we stay in relationship that it lasts, but it just doesn't have this nourishing quality. And so Again, what I've been talking about today is the benefits of spending time alone, away from intimate sexual connection, to heal yourself, fill your own cup, and to develop your sense of self-worth, self-love, and taking care of yourself is so meaningful. And then when you are ready to connect with other people, and it doesn't mean you ever have to be in a relationship, but if you want to, you have found some footing within yourself that you feel solid enough to where it's going to be so much more satisfying. And the more we reach towards that, and again, you can do these kinds of exercises in relationship, but really taking time for yourself, making an agreement with your partner and saying, I want us to try this a little bit, that maybe just one evening a week we spend a couple of hours doing our own thing and nourishing what makes us feel like something we enjoy doing, that helps our sense of self, our individuality, that is nourishing. And this will improve the relationship, the quality, the intimacy of the relationship. So it's really powerful. So again, you have been listening to Dynamic Change. My name is Michelle Love, and today this show is on KPCA-LP in Petaluma. And I upload all these shows where I'm talking about wellness. I'm talking about psychological patterns, belief patterns, somatic experience of how your emotions live in your body, and how can people have more wellness in their life. I upload these shows every week to my YouTube station, which is Michelle Love with Dynamic Change and Wellness. And you can watch all the shows. There's 57 of them now. You can also go to my website, dynamicchangewellness.com, to see all the workshops and mastermind groups and things that I provide for people. I teach self-defense, all kinds of things to really help people heal from so many different angles. And I want to read about some events that are local right now. So what's happening in Petaluma, beginning on Thursday, April 2nd. Tune into What's Happening Petaluma to plan your weekend. Every Thursday from 4:30 to 5 o'clock p.m., co-hosts Michael and Andy will discuss who to see and what to do in Petaluma. Everything from theater, exhibits, gallery openings, nonprofit events, and of course, concerts and music. That's What's Happening Petaluma here on KPCA 103.3 FM on your radio dial or your digital thing, right? Everything's digitalized now. So I want to read about other things. How exciting. We have more things locally. How about this? It's AAUW Petaluma Branch Film Festival, Women's Festival, Film Festival, March 29th, 2026, at the Santa Rosa Junior College Petaluma campus. Carol Ellis Auditorium, 680 Sonoma Mountain Parkway in Petaluma. The doors open at 1:30 p.m. Showtime 2 o'clock. General admission is very affordable, I will say that. And students even have a more affordable rate. How fun is that? And so, they have just these wonderful film festivals. There's some beautiful boutiques in town and art galleries. So do what nourishes your soul. Thank you for tuning in today and listening to my topic and my imaginary example with my person that I made up today. Her name was Pamela. To talk about the benefits of spending time alone outside of a romantic relationship and taking time to nourish your sense of self, taking time to heal any emotional wounds that may need to be addressed, and finding ways to fill your own cup so you can feel new qualities, new textures of What does romance feel to you? What does sensuality feel to you? What does love mean to you? And what do you want to connect and build and heal within yourself? So when you connect with others, it is such a lovely, satisfying, beautiful connection of feeling seen and understood. Thank you for tuning in today.